Hey everybody, this is episode number 14 of Festool Shop Talk. We have Nick Schiffer here from NS Builders and the Modern Craftsman. You might have heard me say these episodes of Festool Shop Talk are a must listen to. This is a must listen to. We just wrapped it up. Nick, you're awesome. We really appreciate it. There is so many gems and nuggets in this episode, so stay tuned and give it a listen. Thank you. Okay. Hey, what's up, brother? It's so good to see you.
You too, man.
Everybody, this is Nick Schiffer. Hang on. Welcome to another episode of Festool Shop Talk. Believe it or not, it's your number 14, Nick.
I like that number.
I do too. It's a good one. It's not 13.
Yeah.
All right.
Skip that.
We are here in the Boston area, actually Avon, Mass, at Nick's shop. NS Builders is his company. You can follow Nick on NS Builders on Instagram. He's got about 140,000 followers. Wow. But also, you can, and when I first hung out with Nick for a period of time, it was on the Modern Craftsman, and that's his podcast. I think they just dropped episode number 208.
We did, 208, yeah.
Unbelievable. I forget what my number was.
Oof, you were pre-100, I think.
I think so. I think I was in the 60s, like number 63. I won't say the other number.
Okay.
54? Wow.
You get Doug behind the scenes.
Man, he's unbelievable.
54.
54.
Confidence.
It was funny because that was my first podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was.
I know.
And I was so honored to do it with you guys. It was so much fun. That 3 hours flew by.
Dude, we were in Jeff Sweener's shop.
I know.
And I was like, you were there, and I don't even remember if we planned it ahead of time.
Nope.
I know we were having Jeff, and I was like, Sedge, you gotta stick around. Because you either left that night or first thing in the morning.
No, we had a shoot on this old house that day, and
Right.
then a shoot for the next day.
Okay.
And then I flew out that night.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I was at a JLC event, you guys were there.
Well, I asked you to do a podcast there. I think I asked you to do a
God.
podcast at the Builder Show. And I was like, this guy's bitching me.
Hey.
He's like, oh, I'm your fan, but I'm not going to be on your show.
But I've known you for quite some time.
Yeah.
I forget how we met.
I think we met at the Festool headquarters. Well, I think we communicated through Instagram.
Yes.
And then I went out to the headquarters, me, Jeff Mack, a bunch of other people.
That's right.
And we basically lobbied to make sure that your Instagram didn't get deleted.
I know. As you guys told me I should start Festool Sedge.
Yeah.
Because you told me, out of all the people that were there, you told me, Sedge, what you showed me in the first 2 hours here of the domino, my guys have been using it for 6 or 7 years.
Right, and that was before, I think that was right when we started building a team. I had this equipment, I was buying it for myself, and I was using it to 20 or 30% of the capacity. I remember it was the domino, and you had done this. I don't know what it was now, but I remember just watching you and be like, son of a gun, I didn't even know it could do that. And that resolved every issue I've ever had with it. And, and that's, for your Instagram page, that's why I found it so valuable. It's someone needs to be teaching this, and not only for, my sake, but from, a Festool's sake, where it's if people understand how to use the tools to their fullest potential, they can get over things that might prevent them from purchasing, cost, or the flexibility of being able to use it along a tool platform, where it's yeah, but that's because you're assuming that this drill is just like this drill, but that drill can do other things that it can't. Or obviously a domino is kind of in the class of its own. Maybe similar to a biscuit joiner, but there's differences that have led us to find the value in that tool so much that I think we have multiple. Now, I think everyone has their own domino machine.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know how long ago that was? I do.
I have no idea.
I just celebrated an anniversary last week. We've done 750 snippet videos.
Okay.
And 5-year anniversary, March 17th.
That was 5 years ago?
Like that, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wicked fast.
Yeah.
So I also want to mention something else. We'll talk about it during the podcast.
Yeah.
You also just started with Ken. We'll go into that in a minute.
Sure.
Matria Millwork.
Materia.
I'm so.
I knew you were,
my pronunciation's horrid. You knew I was. Matria.
Materia.
Materia, like material.
Material, yeah.
Materia.
So I started NS Builders it was. It's fine.
I'm sorry.
It's actually probably helpful. Everyone's going to laugh and then now remember materia because I corrected you twice.
Yes, sir.
But no, so I started NS Builders 9 years ago. And when I started I was a carpenter. And I started the business, that's it. I was just a carpenter. I did a kitchen renovation. I left my commercial. I was doing high-rise construction as like an assistant project manager.
Oh.
And I really enjoyed it. I liked that part of construction, but when I got to the finished stage of it, I realized that like my passion wasn't there. It's like everything, there was so much coordination behind steel and mechanical and precast and concrete. It was so interesting to see. And then all of a sudden cabinetry and tile showed up and I'm like, what are we doing here? It's like, this is just like, we've lost a lot of the creativity, or the money's not being spent here, which I understand from like that model, like building high-rise communities and things like that. I get it, the model doesn't work. So I found myself doing a lot of side work, and I was doing so much side work where, and I'm not saying this to necessarily show off, but I was literally working 60-hour weeks at my full-time job.
Wow.
And 30 to 40 hours a week part-time, where there was times where I remember doing a kitchen renovation at night. They didn't live in the house, and they said you can work whenever you want, and I would leave work, grab dinner, and work until midnight. We were talking about Breaking Bad off.
Yeah.
Reference it right here because I was doing demolition on this project, and I had a full Tyvek suit on. And now imagine you're in your home across the street, 11 p.m., and a guy walks out in a Tyvek suit and throws it in the dumpster. And I would do that, and I was renovating this kitchen, and my now wife, we were dating at the time. I always tell the story that she gave me the ultimatum, like, hey, it's one or the other. But she didn't. But she, it was getting ridiculous where it's like we were spending so little time together that ultimately I decided hey, I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to start NS Builders. But I did. It was a carpentry company. I was doing miscellaneous carpentry projects, small renovations. I did a whole home renovation solo with the help of my cousin at the time, my brother, one of my friends. And like, obviously I had a great... I actually didn't have a great sub pool. I was developing that as, kind of in the moment. But fast forward, that job kind of led me to another job, and then I started hiring people. And it was Mike, who you had seen earlier. Mike joined me as like my first real, full-time employee. I had friends that worked for me, and all the credit to those guys. Like, they came on board, they believed in me, but I knew that this wasn't what they wanted to do. So Mike, I knew, this is what he wanted to do, and he joined me. I started NS Builders and started growing it into more of a remodeling company at the time.
Right.
So kind of fast forward, we started doing bigger and bigger remodeling projects, and my goal has always been to build really custom homes. And throughout the years, as everyone's style does, it adapts. And I fell in love with modern architecture and really complicated builds. And this is why I think I like the commercial side so much, is that the high-rise stuff, there's so much coordination, there's so much steel, there's so many interesting materials, and really understanding that, which I was like, how do I pull that back into residential? So now, 9 years later, like, we're doing more new builds and complicated builds. Myself and my team, like, we're obsessed with the details. And it's something that we talk about constantly, like the team here in the shop, like, we're always looking at, like, how do we improve that detail? How do we make that better? And we even have conversations, amongst ourselves where it's like, we'll complete something and we'll drive each other crazy where it's like, let's just do that again. And it's like, we'll rip stuff out, and it's like, James, one of our cabinet makers here, it's like, we've had conversations on site. Ian over there, like, we'll go through details and be like, we can do this better. And we just really got to a point where we understood that if we want to be great, we have to be great all the time, and we can't let... So, fast forward to January 1 this year, Ken and I were in a year-long discussion about what's the fate of the cabinet shop. Because what I found is that as our projects started getting away from the smaller renovation and smaller projects, we were doing less and less cabinetry because you're doing less jobs. My goal as NS Builders, I want to do less projects but bigger value and more detail. So of course it's going to be millwork, but how do you scale a millwork shop based on one company's millwork needs? So that's why we said, why don't we expand upon this? Why don't we grow this into its own company? And that's where we started talking about, splitting the millwork shop into materia. So yeah, Ken and I decided, hey, we're going to partner on this, and we're going to grow this into a millwork shop that expands beyond NS Builders. And immediately upon doing that, we had set out to hit a certain goal, in that first year, and we crushed that goal from a sales perspective in a month and a half. So now, as you look around, the shop is packed. My team is, we're working on top of things, and like we're in a point where we need to expand. Yeah.
So you're constantly looking for a new space.
Yeah, and one of the things for us is, our goal would be to build a building.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the romantic. I want to build like, a mass timber like space building, like gorgeous, something you see in like Switzerland.
Yeah.
And have it be like millions of dollars. And,
wood burning stove.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice and cozy in the winter.
Humidifiers everywhere, like perfect temperature and humidity inside. And that's, but that's the nature of where we're at, where it's like I'm fortunate, and my team is fortunate. Like we all continue to believe in what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're looking to really hone in on how we do this the right way, and just constantly challenge ourselves with like, let's be better. And there's these big challenges in our way, like these hurdles of trying to find a new space. Ian, has sent me multiple links, of spaces that we can move into. I remember calling one. They were like, "Yeah, you're number 13 on the list."
Wow!
So we're also in this race to find a space. But at the core of it, it's like we realize that here's an opportunity for the millwork shop to grow.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate where James and Ian decided to jump on board with Ken and I. We're going to build this thing into a bigger company, and then as this continues to grow, we all benefit from it. Yeah. We get a bigger shop. We're doing projects for other builders. We have a project in New York. We just shipped a project to Arizona.
Wow!
And being able to expand upon that makes it really interesting.
And Ken right now is doing an install in New York.
Yeah, he's in Tribeca right now. The guys just finished a kitchen a couple weeks ago. And he's out there with an install crew installing our first kitchen in Tribeca.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, we had always talked about like, hey, this would be cool to expand beyond Boston. I think we underestimated how fast that would come.
Wow. Yeah, I was talking to Ken recently, and he said you guys are booked way out.
A little over a year, which it's everyone's like. When we get a call now, it's like, hey, I know cabinetry is like 24, 30 weeks. And I'm like, I'm like, what's the max amount of time you wanna wait?
Wow.
They're like, 6 months, 8 months. I'm like, we're a year. But that's partly because like we are limited to our space, and we're also a small team, which, we like, I fully appreciate having the small team, but our goal is to continue to like find people and grow. And we want to do that really selectively. It's not a matter like, this is where I struggle. Is I want to hire people that want to learn this, and guys that like truly just want to get into this to learn. But we can't do that until we have more people that have the experience, because it's hard to if I have two guys that want to learn, and I have two guys that know what they're doing. Now most of their time is spent teaching. So it's like this constant balance of like experience and people that want to learn. Experience, people that want to learn. It's the same thing with NS Builders. It's like I have a handful of people that are like, hey, I want to change my career, or I'm getting out of school and I want to get into the trades. Like, are you willing to teach me or kind of shadow? And it's like, I would love that. We don't have the capacity at this point to teach.
So right now, how many projects you got going on? How many homes, renos?
We have three active projects right now, cool. And our goal is to be 4 to 6 at a time with the team that we're currently molding. Gotcha. So we're good right now. We're in a good spot with the 3 projects. We have some other smaller stuff. I should actually say 4. We do have 4 projects, and we have some other smaller stuff. We also launched a home care division this year. So I have Matt and Rachel in my office. You asked me before. I sleep good.
Oh my God! Oh yeah. When you sleep.
But I do. But I'm again like the home care came out of necessity, where it's like Matt. He was always in home care. Rachel came in. She had experience in home care and maintenance I'm sorry, warranty maintenance. And we said, if we're going to build these really amazing homes, the last thing I want to do is step away from them and then have someone else come in and fix them.
Yes.
So it's like, if I can build the business, like it's very incestual almost, where it's like, NS Builders is the core. We build the home. Material millwork feeds that millwork. The home care is maintaining that home for the longevity. We didn't even talk about, but Motif is, the media side. I'm partnered with Doug on that, where it's like, that's how we create all our content. So, and that whole content model has been refined and refined and refined. And so it's this like center hub that, allows multiple kind of channels of, groups of people, and but also, revenue and things like that.
So that leads to another question I have down here. How have you utilized your social media? You're on Instagram, I would imagine, Facebook. You hit TikTok yet?
I'm on TikTok.
Woo! TikTok, baby.
I haven't figured out the dances yet.
What other platforms? I know nsbuilders.com.
Yeah. So
it's your website.
I could sit here and say, like, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. I would say that those are probably the most accurate in the sense of like what I'm active on. There's been other channels that I've certainly dabbled with, but your question about how I've utilized it, about 2 years ago, I realized that we were getting an enormous amount of leads for like vanities. Like, hey, I need a custom vanity. Which was like, we didn't have material millwork at the time, so I'm like, I'm not taking advantage of, I'm a builder. Like, why are people misunderstanding that I build homes and renovate homes? And I started realizing that our social media was telling that story. It was like constantly talking about the details behind our millwork and our cabinetry. It's like, which is all great. Like, that was a big part of what we do.
Sure.
No one was ever realizing the core of like who we were. So I started realizing like, I can shape the future of our business if we tell the story in a different way. And so instead of talking about like, hey, look at the cabinetry we built and the details on how we built the cabinetry, it was more like, hey, look at the mudroom in this home that we renovated. So now you just don't change the whole narrative to that story, and people start realizing, oh, they renovated this house, and then they're not looking at us for the cabinetry. They're looking at us like they renovated and did this really beautiful job with millwork. Yeah. So in that, like, that's how Materia came about, because we're like, there's a market there that people want our cabinetry outside of NS, but NS needs to really communicate that. So for us, we have looked at our content model of, we need to explain why. Like, I don't want to be a how-to guy. I don't want to necessarily walk through like the steps on how to do this. I want that to be a visual representation of like video and photo, but talk about why we're doing it.
Yes.
And really just like get a client to understand the value in working with us. So for us, everything has always been a core around video. And so our content model in a nutshell is that we film every week. So every Monday we go out, we film, we create multiple long format videos, which is called our site visit on YouTube. And then in that video, we're creating multiple short clips. Yep. And then we're flipping the camera vertical. We're doing the vertical for Instagram Reels and TikTok. And then we're also getting photos out of it. And then I'll take that and we'll run that video through. We'll take all the, like, basically everything I talked about, right, in description format. I have that rewritten into a blog. Put that on the website. Oh yeah. Every single week, the website gets a brand new blog. So I'm ranking. It has a video link to it. I'm ranking because of video, and it's just this circular pattern. And for me, what I've realized is that I do connect a lot with end users, like clients, but my goal is to really connect with the architect. Yeah. And as I ramp up video, I will literally watch my inbox fill up with more architects reaching out. And that's really been the focus, is like, we need to explain who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And and ultimately we believe, like, hey, if we want to be great, we're going to be great, and we're going to challenge ourselves to be great. And perfect example, like, they're actively right now, and by the time this might come out, like, it will probably be communicated on social media, but I had posted a video just recently, and I was so focused on the result of something else that I was missing the fact that I like missed a detail, like a very important detail when it comes to like vapor encapsulation and like possibly running the risk of having a mold issue. And I was so focused on the fact that I was trying to prevent hardwood flooring from having an issue.
Gotcha.
this is the benefit of social media. You put that, and everyone's like, "Hey, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." And it's like I don't have that thin of skin where it's like I'm going to defend and be like, "No,
Right.
I'm not wrong."
Thank you very much.
Holy crap! Like, yeah, you just pointed something out, and that's really the other benefit of the social media for
Right.
us is that when we're posting this stuff, there's a lot of people auditing what we do and checking it. Like when you're there's a lot of people looking.
Believe me, I
There's
know.
plenty of people that are going to be like you're doing this wrong, and when they're right, that gives us the opportunity to audit ourselves and correct it live.
Yes.
And that's a really big benefit of us doing this content so fast paced. Where it's like, hey, when did you record that video? I'm like, yesterday. And you're like, so you posted that immediately? I'm like, yeah, because I want that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to. I called the super on that job. I'm like, hey, we missed a detail, and he's like, on it. We're on it. We'll have it fixed tomorrow. And that has been, again, going back to if we want to be great, like this is an opportunity for us to put ourselves in the focus, and people will audit us. And it's
Oh, wow.
I get it. Like I had a conversation the other day, and they're like, I don't know how you deal with the hate. I'm like, sometimes it is what it is. Like, and if anything, at this point, it fuels me.
Me too.
Yeah, it's like good. I want
Well, I don't want to say I want more hate, but people,
it makes you work harder.
and it does. And I get. I'm going to talk about Festool Sedge. Somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey," and I was reading it to the guys in the car.
Yeah.
He said, "Hey, what's the shortest that it can go on the rail, the parallel guides?" And Chris in the back piped up. He goes, "That's a good question." I go, "I know. I got to go measure it tomorrow," but I never thought of that question.
Right.
And I'm that type of person where I don't let some of the haters get to me.
Right.
I just, because I know, I don't know what it is, but it doesn't bother me.
Right.
It does fuel me because I
Yeah.
have become a better trainer at Festool because
Communicator, everything.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's like, and now I feel like a lot of times I'll throw Easter eggs in there for like someone to pick on me. And like we had a waterproofing video, and like I'm talking like this messy black stuff all over the footings, and I wore my white sneakers on the job site, and I have my boots in my truck. I'm like, no, I'm like, leaving the sneakers on so someone can tell me I'm not a real builder.
Exactly.
And it's like, sure enough, it's like no real builder would wear white sneakers. I'm like, you're right, man. I'm like, keep watching the video.
Yeah.
Let me get my view out of you, and you can move on.
Hey, your attention to detail is incredible. And of course I follow you on Instagram. But I got to tell you, I was blown away with that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that elliptical staircase. I know. I'm going to tell you, that was one of the most incredible attention to details I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it must have driven you guys nuts.
Yeah.
I knew it. I knew it.
There's a lot of reasons why I can answer that. I'm gonna find the best reason. I would say the best reason it drove us crazy. So we looked at that. So let me just kind of give you the backstory. That staircase was a very normal staircase when it started, and we had been hired to do the rest of the project. And the client was like, "Hey, I want to do something with this staircase." And I remember standing there, and I think my super at the time was on the site with me. I was like, you know what I think we should do? Let's blow this wall out. Let's build this staircase when you walk in. Pretty normal, but let's make it into an ellipse and then have that thing elliptical down into the basement. And then now your basement won't feel as though it's a basement. It's not closed off.
That's
There's no wall
exactly
there.
right.
And what happens is with that elliptical cutout in the floor, you can look down and see this additional living space, and it will be more inviting. So we had kind of just communicated that. I threw it out. We had drafted it in a drawing. I sent it out to a rendering company. I said, hey, render this so I can show the client. And the client was like, absolutely, let's do that. And we had never built anything like this. And thankfully the super that was on the team, like he understood how to draw it. So we were like, if you can draw it, we should be able to model it, and we can then create templates to cut from. And we did. And the lamination process was one of the issues that we ran into. Is like we learned a lot about how to laminate the stringer. We were super fortunate. The guys over at HDI Stairs in Rhode Island, we had talked to them about working with them, and it didn't work out. I don't remember if it was a cost thing or a schedule, but they gave us like, hey, here are the tips that we've ran into that were an issue. And this is the power of social media.
Of course.
Where it's like, hey, like they understand, like we're not trying to take work from them. We just have the team and we want to do this. And they're like, simple things like when they were laminating, like, hey, don't add staples to it because when you clamp that down, the staple is going to create a bulge in it. And they were like, and use cellophane and wrap the whole thing in cellophane before you bend it, and then spread it so the glue doesn't get all over your clamps on the floor. And we're like, dude, these are
gold.
Yeah, gold tips.
Yeah.
And so we got it built, and the stair came out, beautiful. I remember looking back, and we had expended our hours, and we had then went on to build another set of stairs, which same thing. It was like we had targeted that separate stair. It was like a $30,000 budget, which, hey, that's a good stair budget. We ended up at like $47,000. By the time we added all our hours and like we prefabbed this thing in the shop behind us and we got it on site. And that's what really got us to a point where we really respected like these guys that are dedicated to stairs. And we realized like, yeah, we have the ability to do that. And I think that one day as our team grows, like maybe we take a lot more of that in-house. But that's, with that being said, like that's what I love about our team here is that, oftentimes we collectively say, let's try doing that ourselves. Mm-hmm. We had a piece of furniture, the one that we sent out to Arizona, and we were like, we knew what that thing cost retail from a vendor. We basically went into it saying we can build it faster, but it's going to be double and it would be better quality. And, ultimately, like, the cost, we expended all our costs there, but it was such a great opportunity for us to learn.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's an opportunity where we can do something different, learn from it, and then it makes us a better, cabinet maker, furniture maker, builder.
Yep.
And we constantly evolve. And that's where, since day one, I've always looked at the overinvesting that we do on projects has always been worth it. It oftentimes can be very painful in the moment, especially if you are keeping track of your numbers. But at the end of the day, it's like my CFO will be like, hey, you're destroying yourself on this project. I'm like, I know, but like there's so many lessons that we've learned that we can then turn around and sell. And I've always looked at that as if we're doing a better job than we're being paid for, then our goal is to promote that, which is why we are so heavy on social media. Is like promote that for the client that will pay for it, and then that next client will pay for that product.
Oh yeah, some of these things you're taking on are just mind-boggling, and you have to have the right client too.
Yeah, at the core of it, it's really communication and expectations, and I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't always the best at communicating those expectations up front, and I owe that. Like, I'm more of a visionary. I'm focused on like what this can be. I'm the new shiny object. Like, and I'm not going to be the implementer or the integrator. And like for me, that's where I look towards like the people that are on our team. I want you guys to be the integrator. I'll think of the stuff, and then I have to step away because I won't be that person that can refine that process.
Right.
And and I'll look at the opportunity where it's, hey, I know that we're going to be over budget on this, but I see value in actually going through this, getting it all the way to the completion, and then again, like you said, from the client's perspective, but my team has to communicate that, like, hey, listen, this is what we're expecting this to take. This is how long it's going to take. This is what it's going to cost.
Right.
I would go in there being like, no, I shouldn't cost that much. And it's like, well, it did. Like, that's what my team is hired for, is like to keep me in check. Where it's like, I want to build the super complex elliptical stair, but that client might not want to pay for it.
Right. That wine cellar?
Wine cellars, yeah. We get
that was unbelievable.
We get a lot of credit for that. That was a, Genuine up in Canada, I have to give them a shout out. They were amazing to work with. It was shipped from Europe over to them. They drove down and installed it. We were just there like to help facilitate. The hardest part of that job was me selling it to the client.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive wine cellar, and thankfully the client, immediately fell in love with it and was like, yeah, we want to do it.
I showed that to my wife, and she's like, we don't have the room that we...
1,800 bottles of wine.
I could not believe it.
I don't know if they ever filled it.
I was like, just filling it.
Filling it's going to cost more than building it. Especially if you drink nice wine.
She goes, can we...
Even decent wine, like a $15 bottle of wine, like that's still a lot of money.
She said, can we walk on that? I go, what do you mean, can we? The client's going to walk on it, and we're not getting that.
Yeah.
That was over the top.
Yeah, that kitchen was. That's the whole consensus on that whole kitchen. I don't know if we ever told the story about that wine cellar, but so there's a couple things here. If you had followed along the project, you probably had noticed that we installed that wine cellar before we did the whole kitchen.
Oh yeah.
And we did that because we wanted to make sure we set the elevation correctly. Because in that particular kitchen, it was an old ranch house that was all wood framing, but they had added an addition on, and it was slab on grade. So our slab over on the far left was our max height.
Yep.
And we needed to set everything to make sure that when we tiled that slab, it came across the floor and hit our elevation for the wine cellar. We screwed that up. It's funny now.
I don't know. Oh, I know.
It's funny now. But so thankfully, we had set the elevation. We were confident. And I remember I was doing my weekly check-in, and Mike was on that site, and like you could see the fear in his eye, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And he goes, "We're too low." I'm like, "Well, that's better than too high." Like I immediately have to look at it that way. Like if we were too high, that's a bigger issue. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "I know, but the whole entire that glass door is $15,000, and it's grouted in. So like it's a stainless steel ring that got bolted to the concrete core, and then it got grouted. So it's like it's in there." And he's like, what if we damage it? And I'm like, what if we don't? And I was like, grab me a chipping gun. And I knew he was just like, he was so, not so panicked, but he was just like, knew that this was a mess up and this was an issue. And I grabbed that chipping gun and I just went to town and I chipped all the grout out. And I'm like, let's not think about this anymore. We know it's wrong. We have to lift it up. Let's go. And I just chipped out the grout and, the reason I did it, I was like, I want Mike to feel as though like, hey, like we can correct this.
Wow.
And I don't want you to feel like it's detrimental. Yeah. And I was like, it sucks, but I'll jump in. I'm happy to we got it chipped out, and he took it from there, and he raised the cover up, he re-grouted it, everything got patched. Talked to the Genuine about it. They were good. Bolted the thing back down. Dead nuts.
Wow.
So it was, and that client, we were fortunate that they went for it. And it's a really cool feature. It photographs and videos really well, but it's really funny because when you're in the space, you almost don't know. Because think about when you walk through a space, you're not walking like this.
No.
It's you're almost and when the lights are off in it, it's just like a black hole in the room. Yeah. So you could probably really quickly think if you're not looking at it in your peripheral, it's like a rug.
Yeah.
But it's funny, they have three golden retrievers, and we were like, I wonder if they'll walk around it. And when it was first installed, they would walk around it. But now they lay on top of it because it's cold.
Oh, is that cool?
Yeah, it's not super cold, but it is refrigerated.
Yeah.
And there's 3 layers of glass, so it's actually really well insulated. Yeah. But it's cool. Like glass is just a cooler material anyway.
Yeah. And so they just lay on top.
Lay on top of it. Yeah.
It's wicked. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Hey Nick, can we get a quick shop tour?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're standing in the most unimpressive side of the shop. But let's just start back here. So this is a 2,500 square foot shop. Mm-hmm. Small. This actually started as, so I was in a 1-bay garage in Mansfield. A good friend of mine had this 2-bay garage. It was a 2-bay garage. I have 2 hobbies. I like building stuff out of wood, but I also like building cars. So my left, I had this wall separated I built, and I was building cars on one side, and I was doing cabinetry at night. And finally got to a point where I needed to move. I needed bigger space. I got this space. I dumped all my stuff in it and literally went home. Yeah. It was no shop. And Ken had, I think he replied to a Facebook message. And I was like, hey, looking for a cabinet maker. And I had interviewed him, and I was straight up. I was like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to have any work, enough work to keep you full time, but we can put you in the field. He's like, yeah, I'm down. And from that day, it was like, all right, now I'm just pumping work in the shop. I'm like, Ken, more cabinetry, and it grew into what is now an actual cabinet shop.
That's amazing.
James and Ian joined us, over the course of the last couple of years. We've had a couple other kids, in and out, but we're at a point now where it's the shop is just overwhelmed, with the amount of work, and we can't get material out of here faster. So we don't do any finishing in-house yet. We eventually will. Mm-hmm. But so getting to it, we basically, this area, we do a lot of staging. So behind us we have some cabinetry built. This will end up being staged with all of the completed cabinetry.
Yep.
And since we don't finish in-house, we'll send all the stuff out to our finisher, move all of our boxes down here. When the stuff's back from the finisher, then we'll go right to site with it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this is just, unimpressive. We actually took this out of a historic home that we just knocked down. And before I get any hate for that, the home could not be saved.
Gotcha.
It was really in poor condition. So we actually pulled out a bunch of lumber, and we're going to build some cool furniture for that.
Wicked.
We might give it back to the family at the end, but the goal is to just, utilize what we could out of that.
For sure.
A lot of our stuff's on wheels,
Yep.
so we can tuck it out of the way. I forgot you guys were coming, otherwise I would have cleaned up.
Oh no, it's all good, sir.
But and we also do a lot of our own veneering in house.
Oh, for sure. Oh, cool.
We have a vacuum bag here, and so a lot of the veneers, and that's part of like that attention to detail where the veneer layout is done in house, so we can make sure that our veneers look good. We get book matching. We have we know that the panels are going to be not only book matched in the particular door,
Yep.
but a lot of times these guys are laying the veneer out. So when you're standing on an elevation of cabinetry, that veneer on the bottom door continues through the middle, continues through the upper, even when it's a 5-piece door.
Now, I have a question on that, okay? Because I've waterfalled drawer boxes, all kinds of stuff. And when you install that, you point that out to the customer, right? They like it, but they don't know why.
Exactly. So that's one of the things, like we talked about that all the time. It's like, I want them to not know why they love it.
Yes.
Or like, one of our first kitchens we did was it's on our website, and it's the South End kitchen where we built curved, and this is our first kitchen in the shop. We were like, hey, let's build curved doors. We nailed it. But it's like, but in the island, it's all grain matched walnut all the way around. And client, like, they understood that we were building them a nice kitchen, but that was it. And their parents actually came over, and they said something. They're like, I don't know why this thing looks so good. This thing looks amazing.
Yeah.
And he had told me that, and I was like, let me explain it. And then the client was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's just nice, man. Like, we paid for it. Like, it's good. But yeah, we try to communicate those details, early on and point them out, especially as we capture this content.
Sure.
And share it through our channel, whether it's Material or NS. Like, we want to be calling attention to those details because there is value to that. And it's, the value is like, not just because it's grain match, but it's also like, that's the level of detail we're trying to commit to.
Yes.
It's like, we want to be thinking about these things, and we want to make sure that these are really intentional. And it makes, it adds a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And it also adds the concern of like, you can't misdrill a drawer front.
Yeah.
Because if you do, it's like,
whoopsie.
Yeah, you can't make a new drawer front. Like, that's a stacked drawer.
Yes.
And now, thankfully we have a great faux painter. Blend that in.
Yep.
But that's the thing. It's like, it's putting that pressure on us to be great and be great at what we do all the way through, installation.
Wicked.
So yeah, I mean, that's
cool.
All the veneers ends up in this bag. Again, a lot of the machine is on casters, so we can move around. We have our panel top. Most of our box fabrication is actually done on CNC.
Cool.
And we outsource that right now. There's a shop down the street. Kid I went to high school with, Dovey, he owns a shop down there. So we've worked with him for the last couple of years, and basically figured out like, hey, let's figure out a way that we can catalog parts. Or like give you a nomenclature so like, hey, we're gonna need this box, this dimension with these, shelf pinholes or whatever it is, and he can cut that stuff. So that's like really our first step. Ken does a lot of breakdown, kicks that over to him, we get that, and then it ends up coming in the garage door on that end.
So gotcha.
If we kind of switch, everything comes in that end, and we end up having our, we bought this, Ian probably gives me the most crap for the edge bander. But I bought, everything else I bought new. But I bought a used edge bander, and I was told it was perfect, and I was very wrong.
Oh boy.
And I think Ian and I had a conversation at one point. I was like, all right, if this thing is just going to continue to be an issue, we'll just get a new one. But the goal is to get a new one when we move. But it has, like, it's worked for us.
Yeah.
Because we were doing everything on the Contoro.
Yeah.
And which was great.
Yeah.
And it's a great machine, and we use it a lot, like for the funky stuff.
Yeah.
But when we get, like, we'll get 1,000
I know.
plywood in, and it's really difficult to do that
Yep.
fast. So we get the stuff in here.
It's a point
It's kind
to
of
point.
set up funky where it's like you're feeding it back towards where it came in.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we want to do in the new shop is really think about like the
Flow.
spaghetti chart, right? Like
Yeah.
of how flow comes in. Like right now, it's as you see, it's there's stuff kind of everywhere.
You're moving material
And
a
there's
little
lot
too
of
often.
a lot of inefficiencies. So it comes in here, and a lot of the fabrication and prep is done here on the bench. So Ian primarily spends most of his time in the shop, where James splits his time between in the shop and install.
Cool.
And then Ken is primarily working on getting these projects, the details figured out, getting them into the shop for production, and then we'll flip between sometimes in the shop, sometimes install, and then a lot on like the business side of like getting the projects up and running. So yeah, I mean that's really the whole shop. A lot of the stuff we're not stocking a lot of stuff. A lot of the stuff is sitting, ordering it and getting it into the shop, and we're letting it acclimate, but it's going right into fabrication beyond that.
Cool. Let's get a introduction to these guys right over here.
Yeah.
This is Ian, hard at work.
So.
Yep.
Ian's like, no. So yeah, Ian. Like I said, Ian's been in, primarily spends his time in the shop. Yeah. He is a fantastic cabinet maker and furniture maker. Spent his time building furniture. One of the things that him and I talk about twice a year is doing more furniture.
Always keep my fingers crossed.
Yes. and like I said, the project that we had shipped out to Arizona was actually our first furniture piece as material millwork.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It was I think fun as a project, but also is something that we want to focus on. Is like I said, we want to be millworker, cabinet maker, but also custom furniture maker.
Sure.
And Ian does a lot of furniture on his own too. Has made some really awesome creative pieces as himself. And one of the things that I talk about with everyone, and I really believe in, is like I want these guys to love what they're doing here, and like if there's things that they're doing outside of work as like a side project, it's like how do I help put that into their everyday, so that every day gets to be as equally fun as doing say a side project like furniture.
That's a great philosophy.
Yeah, it's hard.
So who's this guy?
This is James. So James handles a lot. Runs all of our install. So he's doing all the install for our cabinetry. I know I mentioned that we're in Tribeca. He's not in the New York install. We handle these. He's handling everything that is local to us from an install perspective, and then in between installs jumps back in the shop and helps with fabrication, working alongside Ian. So like I said, it's a small team right now, and we're constantly looking for people to add to it, but we're all really picky about who gets added to it.
Yeah, no, it's
hard. It's hard.
It is really hard because just walking in here, I'll make a comment. I've known you, James, for a while.
Yeah.
Ian, I met you this morning. Okay? And it's when you bring somebody into a great team that you have, it's obvious you have to have the right culture. They have to fit. Yeah. Right? And that's one of the toughest things. They could be a great cabinet maker, but they just don't work well with people.
Yeah. And
you got to fit them.
And one of the things that I've had difficulties with is that I don't always see the way that these guys might see it. Where I see like, hey, this person could be really great, and it's a challenge. And I talk about this on the Modern Craftsman a lot. It's like I'm not always going to get, and nothing against you guys, but I'm not always going to get 10 out of 10 honest feedback about someone here, because they want to make sure that they're protecting their job. Mm-hmm. It's like if every person that came in and they're like, I don't like him, then I start like, well, maybe it's you. It's like, why don't you like them? Where the reality is like, I missed something. I didn't realize that person didn't have good character, or that person was, was misleading me into the knowledge that they had. So it's this constant like, open dialogue of, hey, we have to be like, we have to work together. And as a business owner, I feel like that's the thing I struggle with the most. Yeah. Where it's like I forget that I'm the owner or the boss, where it's like I just want to be his friend.
No, I totally know where you're coming from. I mean, I work for a mid-sized corporation, and it's tough because you got to make sure that everybody's doing their job. And I'm that personality where I want to be everybody's friend.
Right.
And it's tough sometimes. I got to realize, okay, I do have to do some work, you know, but it's, and sometimes people move on from Festool, and it's okay. It's okay. But I can see it right now. People are going to watch this and listen to it and go, how do I work there?
Yeah.
Because it's just a good feel. One of the gauges I have is I always ask people, Ian, I asked you right away this morning, how long you been here? But I also look, people are smiling when they're working. You know, when I came in and introduced people, everybody was smiling. That's Mike, right?
It's Mike.
Yeah, he's been with you for a long time. Yeah, for sure. Too long. James was asking me questions about the domino about 4 or 5 years ago at JLC, and I just...
It's crazy.
It's crazy how it's flown by.
I don't think I'll ever really comprehend. Every year, it's like, how long you been in business? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, 8 years? They're like, 9. I'm like, 9 years.
Did you grow up doing this?
Yeah, my father, before I went into high rise, my father owns a residential fence company.
Oh, cool.
So when I was 11 years old, my mom would go down the Cape with my siblings, and I would be like, Dad, I want to stay with you and I want to work. And I would jump in his shop, and he had a metal fabrication shop and a wood fabrication shop, and this guy Al Costa really kind of oversaw the production in the shop, and I just loved working. I love working for many reasons. I love working because I like working with my hands and building things. I also like money.
I know.
So, and when I was
too.
12 years old and I was going to the movie theater and I was paying for all my friends, I felt like a little baller. Yeah. I was like, hey, I got this one, guys. Like, $27? No problem.
I got it.
But, so I worked for my dad for 11 years. So I started as just a helper in the shop, and I, at one point, was doing all the wood and metal fabrication. And then I was handling customer service, and then started really finding my focus.
Hey, that's Mike.
This is Mike. So Mike's with me on NS Builders. He's a site super.
Yep.
He's running one of our new construction projects right now. A real flagship project for us.
Cool.
Great architect out of Utah, Steve Teak, and a really great family. So they're building their forever home. And Mike gets to be the guy that gets to sit on site every day and make it happen.
Move in before they get to move in.
Yeah. Sure.
I'll live there for a while.
So cool. How long have you been? Did you say? How long have you been?
I think he said too long. So.
That was Ian.
Yeah.
Not so cool. Not long enough is what I would say. Is it 5 or 6 years? 6 years
It's over
May,
5.
Right? No, you're January.
December.
You started before Christmas?
Yeah, it was before the New Year. It was like 5th or 6th, something like that.
Okay.
Beginning of
So you're coming up on 6?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've known you for a while too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes good, maybe sometimes bad. I don't know. It's always good hanging out with you guys.
Keep moseying through.
Yeah.
I want to ask one more question.
Yeah.
Because you asked me to be part of a podcast.
Yeah.
How did Modern Craftsman come about?
What it's always been about is this industry, and I'm going to say this industry, and it might pertain to many industries, but this is the industry I know. This industry is lonely in the sense when it comes to dealing with problems and issues and frustrations, and especially in the world that we live in now with social media, people can watch my feed and be like, man, he's got it all figured out. He gets the best projects. He makes a ton of money. He's got a great team. He has no issues, and it's not true. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that we do all have the issues, and frankly, a lot of times they're the same issues.
Yeah.
So the Modern Craftsman really came about where it's like we started collectively talking amongst each other, and just hey, I'm dealing with this. Oh my God, I'm dealing with that too. It's like, how'd you work through it? It's like, I did this. And it's like, I did that. And then we started having guests on, and we would, selfishly, the podcast was for me. Selfishly, I want to talk to the builder that I love following and ask him the hard questions. Like, all right, yeah, that's great. I'm glad that's what your business is. What's your worst day? What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? It's like, I got sued by a client. Walk us through that. Let's talk about that. Because someone in that very moment might be going through that.
Yep.
And listen, I know, like, constantly, I'll be at home and I'll just be like, why am I doing this? Like, this is so stressful. I'm like, it's impacting my social life. It's impacting my personal, like, why would I put myself through this amount of pressure? And when everyone else is making a ton of money, doing something else, or making a ton of money, it's like they're a better builder than me. And it's those moments that I realize this is what the podcast is about. It's about helping everyone that struggles on, in these moments, and having the conversation. We had a conversation with a subcontractor, and we talked about suicide, and that was a difficult conversation, and not to the sense of like, I don't want to like necessarily make it super scary in the sense, but it was a conversation that was very real in the sense of like, there's times and I think in a man's life more so, just because of statistics, right? But like how we have so much pressure as the provider in the family, and then on top of it, we have the pressure of delivering one of the most expensive assets to someone, and there's just an enormous amount of pressure about schedule and cost and everything else, that it leads to a point where like people like have a hard time understanding what their value is. And you're good, Rachel. Yeah, you're good. So it's and so I am going to introduce Rachel runs our home care.
Oh, so hi, Rachel.
Yeah. Hello. But I think like those are the tough conversations that I never want, because I've lost friends to that, and I never want.
Yeah, same.
And I never want someone to feel that way, to the point where it's like they're questioning why they exist based on the stress that they deal with at work. And realizing how common that is, and being able to have an open dialogue about it, and then someone listening to that and be like, man, I felt that way. I drove home that day thinking like my family would be better off without me. And I'm getting chills talking about it. But
I am too.
That's the real side of like what people in general deal with. And it's like when you can relate to someone in those dark moments, and then have a conversation working through that, I think there's a tremendous value in that. And that's really what the podcast has been about is, again, selfishly, I want to learn all the secrets to a successful company, and that's very much what it's part of. But I also want to understand how people deal with mental health.
Yes. And for me, I'm a podcast fanatic.
Now.
Because of you and the Modern Craftsman. I owe you a lot, Mr. Schiffer.
You don't owe me a lot.
But sometimes I look at certain podcasts and I go, that I'm hooked on, okay? And I go, I don't know that person that's being interviewed. I have never heard of that person. So I'll listen for 3 hours. But in that 3 hours, and I truly feel like this podcast that we're doing today with you, there are so many hidden gems. I had to listen to that podcast because there may be conversations in there, okay, but then all of a sudden something hits you like a ton of bricks. You know?
That's the thing. It's like, it doesn't need to be. I think a lot of people, especially today, it's like, there's so much opportunity to learn, and it's becoming easier to learn. But that's what what you just said, it's like the one thing. The one nugget in that conversation where you can take away from it. I'll listen to an audiobook, and I'll listen to it, and I'm like, yep, generic. Oh my God. I didn't know that. And it could be something super silly. Yeah. And it's like, I just have to change like what I do in the morning, and then I feel this much better. As stupid as it is, water in the morning. I listened to this book about, and I'm like, yeah, this all sounds fine. And he's like, one thing I always do, when I wake up, I drink 32 ounces of water, put a little lemon in it, a little salt, and if I do that, I feel much better the rest of the day than if I wake up and drink coffee right away. And I wake up, drink coffee right away all the time. And maybe it's placebo, but it doesn't matter. I feel better.
I drink a glass of 16 ounces of water before my first cup of coffee. I heard that somewhere, and I said, I'm going to try it.
But that's the thing. It's like the one thing that gave you the opportunity to improve your life, your process, your business.
Absolutely.
It's always, you have to realize that there's going to be those tiny little things.
Sure.
Ian, do you need a hand?
No, we're good.
How long is that?
16.
Word.
Wow. That's a 16-foot MDF.
That's a long MDF.
3/4. We're good.
We are good.
Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap this.
Okay.
Because I think Nick and I could talk forever.
Probably. I'm a
I
big talker.
Oh, you and me both. Hey, I just want to thank you.
Yeah, man.
This was fantastic. You're such a giving individual. I really appreciate it. I was great hanging with you today. Thank you, everybody in the shop. I know we're moving some material in. You're really patient with us.
In this tight shop, moving more material.
Oh my God, I can't wait to come and visit you in the bigger shop someday.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick, thank you very much for joining us on Festool Shop Talk.